Starting this year, I announced that I would be slowing down uploads, but this was not me saying that I was stepping away from Maverick Files. Instead, I'm diving even deeper into improving the quality of my uploads. However, Patreon gets the behind the scenes of everything. Patreon supporters, in fact, have already seen this video before it was uploaded, and they see thumbnail ideas along with script updates, and if you support me on Patreon, you even get to vote on upcoming videos. They are the reason this video was made in the first place, as this topic won the last poll that I made. So, before we begin, please consider supporting me on Patreon. That's all. Enjoy your stay.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission.
It seems so radical at first.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
They call themselves targeted individuals, and some call themselves the chosen one. People who have been marked to have their entire life wrecked with paranoia and fear. It is them versus the world. A world that is full of demons, government agents, and energized terrorism. And the world's attacks are cruel and endless.
Another day to live through. Better get started.
Imagine you're living your day-to-day, and you're in your car getting into a heated argument with a friend. After the clash, you part ways and go home to go to sleep because you have work in the morning. On your way to work the next day, you stop to get a coffee, and while you're waiting in line, somebody behind you repeats verbatim and mockingly the most heated moment of yesterday's argument. You turn around and the person smiles, coughs twice, and they leave. That first encounter seems weird, but you shrug it off. You mention it to your significant other later that day. Later that night, you're on your phone and you notice a story in your feed mentioning how your significant other is more likely to cheat in the morning. Before you go to bed, your partner will tell you that they're going to meet a friend at the gym in the morning, and now you're on guard. In the morning, you're driving to work in your car playing Pandora radio, and a commercial for a local private investigator that specializes in cheating spouses comes on in between songs. On your lunch break, you realize your partner hasn't called you all day, and as you scroll your feed, you see a comment mentioning how you are abusing your mentor position at church, and that no one likes you. You shake it off and save the post to comment later, and then you go back to work. You get to your desk, and shortly after, one of your clients calls and chews you out for an unfulfilled purchase order. The person yells at you and is extremely rude, and then hangs up. At the end of work, you notice your significant other still hasn't called you, which makes you suspicious by this time, and so you pick up dinner. Before going home and while in line at the grocery store, a stranger says your name while having a conversation with another person, but to mention in the conversation how her friend had to leave her church group to save her marriage. On your way home, your streaming service plays nothing but songs about cheating boyfriends. You get home and see your significant other with another person of the opposite sex, and you get out of your car and your spouse says that his phone didn't work all day for some reason, and his card isn't working so he couldn't buy gas. That's why the person, who is also a female, drove him home. Not to mention that she is a new client of his. You both get in the house and an argument starts. You accuse your spouse of cheating, he gets mad and leaves. You eat dinner by yourself, go back and check on that negative comment you saw online at lunch, but it's not there anymore. Suddenly, you're waking up, not remembering how you fell asleep. You hear a noise in your house, so you call out your spouse, but there's no answer. You hear a door slam, and then silence. You text your partner. Why'd you leave? I haven't been back, and I'm still mad. Talk to you later, they reply. Now that you know that wasn't your spouse, you check your house. You find the lights are on, and the cabinet doors are open, but nothing's missing. You call the cops. They check the house and see nothing missing or out of place. The police then ask you things like if you've been abusing alcohol or drugs. You reply in defense of yourself, but the cops refuse to file a report since they've seen nothing like a threat and ask if you would like to see a psychiatrist. You refuse. You claim you're not crazy, and they leave. So now you're unable to sleep now and go to work as the morning arrives. After you arrive, your boss asks to meet you, tells you a large client that you maintain had called and is taking her business elsewhere. And because of this, you are fired. You clean out your office and now you're on your way home to a house that you don't feel safe at. Upon arriving, you see that your significant other is moving their stuff out while you were at work. And after another fight, they leave. Now, home alone in your house, stressed out and not feeling safe, you try to wind down with some wine as you wear your Harvard college sweats and you watch some TV. You pull out your phone and scroll your feed, and you begin seeing ads for the exact same Harvard sweatshirt that you're wearing. You're getting creeped out by that, so you go to Reddit to get away from social media, and you start seeing posts about how did you cause your breakup, and then you see a post about how unless you went to Harvard, you shouldn't wear the sweatshirt. And after that is another post that says, my friend, insert your name, is a fuck up. How should I tell them? Okay, a little creepy, but you clicked on it because you're curious. You start to scroll down on the comments, which start off mentioning how horrible Heather is, saying that she's a fuck up at work, and another saying that she's a wino and is never smart enough to go to Harvard. You have now reached situational awareness. Your watchers feel like they are in such a good position to do so that they can directly ridicule you. Your phone freezes up, then turns off, but you already know that now you are being watched.
Why don't you turn back before it's too late?
After reading through subreddits, tweets, and 4chan posts, it seems that these stalkers want you to know that they're there. They want you to be aware of the never-ending looming threat. Why? Well, I'm going to pause here. The issue with majority conspiracy theories is that they're resolved in absolutes. That there is one golden answer to every matter that confuses you. If you look into the corners of the web, you'll find these half-brain theories scattered everywhere. And if you're not careful, you may begin to believe them.
This individual is coming every day. He's been doing this for 4 years in front of our house. And I have seen him with a camera and a tripod in those woods over there. When I approached to see what he was doing, he came running out of the wood, picked up the tripod, and went back to the wood. 4 years doing the same thing. 4 years doing the same thing. This is our house over there.
That's what makes the idea of gangstalking so difficult.
What's up, YouTube? It's your boy coming at you with another one. And yes, I'm posted in Walmart again. I may look slumped or whatnot. I just left work and I only got about 3 hours of sleep last night. Not even. So I'm coming in, in Walmart again because these gang stalkers, these government officials, these military men, these agents, demons, they've been on their job today. They've been on their job today, yesterday, and probably pretty much gonna be on their job tomorrow too. Heavy. But we're gonna debunk all that shit. I'm just in Walmart again because they love to be on my dick. Remember I said I like New York Giants? Right?
Why would the CIA go after you using the most mundane, boring tactics possible? Victims of this tactic are probably now screaming at the screen.
That is exactly the point. It is so no one believes us.
But then if you ask these said victims about the possibility of why they're being gang-stalked, you start to get some interesting stories. Menacing tales of devil worship, corporate black magic, human trafficking, celebrity cults, so on and so forth, usually which the victim has been able to outsmart and escape from. And due to their wits of outsmarting these cults of black magic, these stalker groups now follow after them as a threat. A threat, if not a reminder, that if they open their mouth at any point, they will be wiped off of the map. Then, why aren't these people wiped off of the map? These believers go across the internet shouting how they're being chased by the Rothschild family for escaping an adrenochrome farming lab underground. There are verified accounts on Twitter with large followers who talk endlessly about their gangstalker experiences. Why is it that the moment they get on the internet, they're invincible to their stalkers? If that's the case, what makes them so special that they're kept alive? Why would they just not get rid of you if they knew how much power you had? And if you keep asking them these questions, at first you'll simply be told,
That's the point. They are studying me.
But if you keep prodding, you'll soon be faced with, well, absolutes.
You're a federal agent who's a part of a gang-stalking community.
Or,
It's because I am protected by angels, and the Antichrist can't harm me.
okay, I know I'm tearing into this, and the problem with me and the majority of the internet that does this is that some of these victims have evidence. Like, weirdly specific and rather eye-opening evidence. There are users on Instagram, Reddit, and YouTube who record what they believe to be genuine evidence of gang-stalking activities. Activities such as noise disturbances, highway stalking, and electronic probes. In contrast, chosen ones will shoot down the idea of capturing evidence of them, often brushing it off, saying that it's simply impossible, stating that these perps hack into their phones and delete any evidence, or that they break into their homes to wipe any security footage. Other times, when asked if they can present evidence, they will upload content of them parading around grocery stores, harassing random customers. So, when there's actually footage, it can be kind of haunting.
Everything could have been so simple. But everybody's a meddling fool.
For example, there's a user on YouTube that posts video footage along with a quick summary to what they were doing before the video began. The first clip is of a mysterious car that speeds by their house, before it suddenly goes in reverse all the way down the road. The uploader then goes on vacation, returns home, and that very night, the car suddenly returns. In the video, you can hear the person having a conversation with some unidentifiable person before firing a gun into the air and driving off. Our first impression is probably,
Go talk to the police.
but according to the uploader, they tried. They tried, and the police silenced them and ignored their complaints. And going into the comments, you will find other commenters feeding into this idea. There's echo chamber of pessimism. Everyone you think can help you are all gang stalkers as well. That you're just wasting your time even trying to get justice. Your family, your husband or wife, the local police, everyone. Just give up, and stay alone. They uploaded a later video displaying what they believe is evidence of them being stalked on a highway. They begin driving on one lane before letting another car merge, and this new car is labeled as another perp. The car stays directly behind their vehicle the entire time. The uploader even begins to disrupt traffic laws by going drastically under the speed limit just to see if the car would go around them, reducing their speed down to 40 miles per hour on the highway. A dangerous stunt, and yet the car remains behind them. A part of me wonders why the uploader didn't merge into a different lane themselves to really test if the perp would follow. But you can only ask so much from footage. Eventually, the uploader exits the highway, and the stalker does not follow. And then the video ends. Remember earlier how I said that victims and chosen ones claim that there are energy weapons that are used to attack them? The ideas behind what these weapons are vary widely, from supersonic frequencies to microwave lasers that burn the victim. These supposed weapons are hidden away in secret vans or houses from across the street, and yet, the very same channel would post a video stating that they had evidence of these weapons in act. They claim that there is a mechanical beeper sounding off within their walls.
I don't know if you can hear this buzzing, ringing sound coming from the heater. It's not the heater is closed. It's this energy passing through the heater from the other side of the lake and making this ringing sound. I think it's because it passed through the metal. And it just keeps on all night. And this is what is affecting my body.
It's intriguing, to say the least.
How do we know you ain't running a bluff?
What if I were to tell you that someone had once dedicated a large portion of their life to the lives of a gang-stalking group, that they supposedly discovered, infiltrated, and acted amongst these perps, and acted as a gang-stalker themselves, and then proceeded to document all of their findings?
Who are we?
We drive the ambulances that take you to the emergency room.
When your house is burning, we put out the fire.
We are security guards.
We protect you at night.
You only have electricity, phone, and cable service.
Because of us.
We are the janitors.
We have the keys.
We fix your cars. You don't want to mess with us.
We're like the police.
Except we are above the police.
Private investigator and author David Lawson would spend an estimated 12 years of his life researching gangstalkers, primarily during the 1990s. He would conduct his investigations in the United States and in Canada, and yet his writings seem to be almost completely ignored by all parties. I mean, this man supposedly broke the Matrix here. He cracked the code. He broke into the secret club and documented evidence. 12 years of it. This should be every chosen one's holiday, birthday, and Bible. So, why does no one talk about it? David would break down his documentation into two categories: what was witnessed and his thoughts following the experiments. And immediately, I can begin to understand why, perhaps, victims don't credit or cite his books. I should really just say book, as in one book, because he actually stopped printing Terrorist Stalking in America and updated it to Cause Stalking. So, it's technically the same book. Anyway, as I was saying, David actually states that gangstalkers are pinned from terrorist and anti-government establishments, a concept that is wildly in contrast to a lot of gangstalker conspiracies. A lot of victims believe they're targeted from corporations and militant figures, but David already goes against this. He reports even further that these victims are based around blatant white lies. The gang actually believes they're doing good for the community, whether the community is a small town or an entire city, all because they've been told that the victim has a vast criminal record, oftentimes citing that the victim is a child. This answers, to put it simply, why the victims are attacked. These gangs genuinely believe that they're doing the right thing, a vigilante group rather than a terrorist group. Okay, but why are they chosen in the first place? David conjures this up to multitudes of reasons. First, being the obvious. You're a whistleblower, you know too much, or you are too loud of an activist. Therefore, you get followed and stalked as punishment. But he also speculates that a victim could be, maybe, next in line for a wealthy inheritance, whether it being financial gain, acres of land, or a new house. Unfortunately, David also states that some victims are merely chosen as practice, a conspiracy theory that many victims do believe to this day, which may only fuel their claims of being quote-unquote studied. David claims that he interviewed all who were involved, from stalkers to targeted individuals to the local authorities, who, surprisingly, actually play a part in both ends. I won't go into every single interview because, well, there's a lot, and I have so much more to get into. City employees can be used to harass a target in many ways, including tearing up the road in front of a target's home. Employees of pest control businesses who have access to the keys for apartments, and those who work for alarm and locksmith companies are also of interest. Surveillance is conducted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When a target leaves his residence, they will alert the group, either by cell phone or by business band radio. Other members who are patrolling the perimeter to watch for police and other vehicles driving in the area will race to the location to begin pursuit. If the target flushes a toilet, he may hear a car horn, the sound of a power tool, or hammering, for example. Entry will likely be gained through a member of the janitorial staff, pest control, or alarm technician, since they all have a right to enter. They may even be able to approach a landlord and gain his cooperation after convincing him of their quote-unquote higher purpose. He may also cooperate out of fear. Okay, these are some wild claims, but how did David Lawson even become a gangstalker? Well, rather easily, he says. In his book, he talks about how he got involved from just hearing about activity from a scanner. He said his scanner picked up on a random woman reporting that she was now following a vehicle, and she listed off the car model and the license plate number. And sure enough, later that week, David would hear the same woman over a scanner report on different vehicles numerous times. Eventually, on the same frequency, he would hear murmurs about grabbing a bite to eat at a nearby restaurant. So, he packed up his things, and David headed out. Once he was there, he states that he found the group openly discussing various activities as if they were the police, and that the real police were also in the same vicinity as all of them. David would discover that these groups shared an AM radio station where they broadcasted conspiracies to other willing listeners, discussing things such as Waco or Ruby Ridge. They called it hate radio, and with this new radio station, David would tune in regularly and discover coordinates to a local group meetup. At the first meeting I attended, one young man flashed a phony police badge at me. No one paid any attention. Some of those in attendance were the people I had seen in the local restaurant. This was my introduction to the creepy world of anti-government extremists. An ironic twist, isn't it? The people nowadays who claim they're targeted individuals often share anti-government extremist views, but back in the 90s, it was the extremists who were doing the targeting. That shouldn't come as too surprising, I guess, as even David himself quotes that the Klan developed their own systematic abuse to silence any crimes. So, when did it cross over? When does it go from anti-government extremism to Big Brother is watching extremism? Is it weird that this all feels too easy? But then, there's evidence written from a victim's perspective. No, not from a 4chan post or a Reddit comment. In fact, it's an actual documented memoir that is available on YouTube. The memoir is called Run, Hide, Repeat. The podcast contains 5 episodes, which, in total, runs close to 4 hours in length. And, as the description states, it's 1971, and Ruth Dawkins is going through a messy divorce and fears for the future of her young children, Pauline and Ted. Pauline Dawkins' childhood was marked by unexplained events, a sense of unseen menace, and secretive moves to new cities with no warning. When Pauline was a young adult, her mother finally told her what they were running from: organized crime, secret police, and double lives. For once, we finally get a full constructed story of gang stalking that isn't just a quick paragraph about being microwaved by the CIA. Her mother suffered abuse at the hands of a powerful husband, a man who was a dominant force in the business world. And with this power came abuse and drinking. Eventually they would divorce, and Warren was only allowed the slightest amount of time to visit his kids, all with strict supervision by the mother. Pauline describes early on in her memoir. He complained that he wanted to see more of them, but they could never tell if it was because he missed his children or if because he viewed it as losing his property. Pauline discusses that after the divorce, her mother would seek help from a reverend. He and his wife would help her mother move on, become independent, and the reverend would even show up as a father figure for the kids, all while being happily married himself. But soon, Pauline's mother began to become paranoid. They would also be forced to go on random late-night hikes, but they were told to not talk about it to anyone.
I was young, but still, I knew something about all of this behavior, this secrecy, was weird. Still, despite that, I was happy. I liked school, had friends, and mostly I felt stable, secure. Until the summer of 1974, the year I turned 10. That's the last time I thought of my family as normal. That summer, my mom, my brother Ted, and I went on a camping trip with Stan and Sybil Sears. We started in Vancouver and spent 5 weeks exploring Western Canada and the prairies.
Pauline would soon discover that this camping trip was, suddenly, permanent. They were not returning home. And when asked, she would hear an excuse for the first of a million times. I will explain when you're older. She would also learn that the Reverend and his wife had also moved with them as well. This would become a staple for Pauline and her brother. Every few months, they would suddenly abandon everything that they knew and loved and would move across the country. Every location the family would arrive at, soon, letters would follow. It would soon be revealed that Stan would have a hit placed on him by the Mafia, a hit specifically requested by none other than Warren, Pauline's father. As it turns out, Warren had always been secretly associated with the Mafia, but the reason why Stan was targeted was he had counseled a man who was whacked by the mob, and now they were afraid that Stan knew too much. The story goes from paranoid mother and a reverend providing assistance to mobster gangstalkers versus government agents. And then it turns into a strange love story as the mother and the reverend end up falling in love. One hell of a movie this would be. And yet, for Pauline and her brother, this was reality. For over 20 years, they escaped being stalked by the Mafia. However, I can't help but feel that, at least in my opinion, both of these documented stories are jarring in comparison. Pauline's novel consists of this deep, complex, disturbing web of communications, while Lawson's felt very simple. He sat down, had lunch near some gangstalkers, and then joined them as if it were a book club. It's quite the contrast. However, anonymous stories seem to provide much more detail than published stories, as if anonymity is where the real truth hides. Therefore, it's time we take a look into the gross underbelly of this phenomenon.
I will deliver thee out of the hand of the wicked.
I'll be completely honest. This whole section is what I was most excited for. Internet forums allow for secrecy and privacy, more or less pending where that person is posting. And with the illusion of anonymity comes the real tinfoil hat confessions. July 11th, 2020. A user would approach 4chan's paranormal board. The user believes himself to be a part of a gangstalking initiative and opens a thread for a Q&A. Gangstalking coordination's expert here. It's a private practice, kept quiet and at arm's length from triple-letter agencies. Industry term for what we do is DE, domestic espionage, and legally, it isn't different from what a private investigator would be expected to do. In practical terms, we get tech that you don't have access to, and we use it to fuck people up and watch them try to fix it. We make ourselves noticeable enough to be apparent to the target, while still maintaining the appearance of coincidence. An external observer sees a person making connections where there are only a few similarities. In my experience, it's more of an art than a science. If you're a target, in other words, we'll make sure you notice, and that you look crazy for doing so. How to tell the difference between a coincidence and a gangstalking incident? Per Goldfinger, once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. A coincidence can still happen 3 times, but the odds of it being just a coincidence go way down after that. I'm basing this on how long it takes most people to notice the difference, of course. We've had some oblivious motherfuckers who get followed for years without picking it up. Someone in the last thread asked us if we only work for governmental organizations, and the answer is, technically, no. We are a private practice to keep things plausibly deniable on the parts of our employers. So in effect, anyone who can afford our fees can employ our services, regardless of affiliation. The trick is, anyone with that kind of money generally is either formally in the government or so influential they might as well be. There have been exceptions, but they're rare enough to count with one hand. Why do people get gangstalked? Why did it only happen to me frequently when I was at my weakest? Now, when I'm stable, they rarely show themselves. There are many reasons, and the rule of thumb is that if you are, you probably know why. Not always, of course. And the more unstable targets will start talking astral fairy magic out of the gates. However, anyone who says they're being followed because they know state secrets or have other information are probably right. From the perspective of the powerful, having someone killed or disappeared is unreliable. People prepare for the potential of getting killed, but what they don't prepare for is being made to look insane. far less being driven to that point. It's a slow burn, and it risks information leak, but it allows you to neutralize leaked information once the source starts talking about gangstalkers. The user's thread lasts for hours, with users asking about personal connections, experiences, and military involvement, and being given vague answers. Can you ever retire? If you keep your nose clean, helps to change your name and get some distance between you and the work. But if you make yourself not worth the money and time to go after, you can go to your deathbed without any issues, or so I'm told. This would be the final answer that OP would provide to this thread. A few weeks prior to this thread, another poster would create a gangstalking thread, a topic that isn't really uncommon for the X board. The user would start off with some, might I say, gibberish rhetoric, before suddenly spending the next several hours creating a survival guide to gangstalking, or as they title it, COINTELPRO 2.0. They copy and paste from a website that now lay desolate, creating his own table of contents. In this table, we get chapters such as,
why is this happening to you? How to solve this? Microwave and radio wave radiation.
In total, the user would write 32 chapters. If you want to listen to everything that was written, I recommend you check out Tetsuya's video, which I linked down below, as he proceeds to read everything that this user wrote. After this, the poster would tie gangstalking to being a tool of systematic oppression created by the FBI. These tools were created as psychological warfare techniques to break one's mind and will. This tool is none other than COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO is an abbreviation for Counterintelligence Program, a program that actually operated for almost 2 decades, running from the 1950s up until 1971. Its purpose? To discredit, weaken, and diminish any political parties that oppose the United States government, often known to be used against the Black Panthers, the Communist Party, and anyone else labeled as suspects of the state. When a target was chosen, their name would be slandered in the press. If an outsider agreed with the views of said party, they too would be seen as delusional or a potential suspect. Your whole community would turn against you. So, for peace sake, why get involved in the hassle and just avoid the party at all means necessary? I mean, you don't want to sound crazy, right? It should be of little to no surprise that targeted individuals refer to COINTELPRO as evidence. The definition is nearly word for what they're describing. A group of people, especially government figures, secretly out to tarnish their reputation, causing public dismay around their character. It's easy to believe you're crazy if the entire town is murmuring slander behind your back. It dissuades the majority from believing your story and thus causing you to be more and more alone. The end goal? Either drive you to madness or drive you out of town. But what if you don't go outside? What if you're an introvert, a recluse, someone who refuses to partake in society? How are you targeted then? And that is when the belief of energized weapons begins to conjure. At first, I was going to joke about alien ray guns and all that, but I decided to take this more seriously. I looked into these wild claims, and what I'm about to show you might seem borderline fictional, but it is very uncomfortably real.
A startling discovery is made.
You are currently looking at various government documents and illustrations, all containing research of energy and radio wave weapons. Majority of these were top secret until 2006. And right here is a documented annex of numerous United States patent files that were filed and approved, along with their description and inventor. You can find companies such as Raytheon, an infamous weapons company which issued a patent in 2005 for a device that is able to direct high-power magnetic waves at a target for weapon purposes. Even Sony had issued a patent in 2008 in order to monitor community mood by remotely analyzing voice, text, and biometrics. I guess now is a good time to bring up another Sony patent, US 8246454B2, which requires users to yell the advertiser's name in order to end a commercial. That's great. These patents are horrifying. There's one that's purpose is to control human behavior with low frequency waves. Another one, from the 80s, had the purpose of controlling the mental state of subjects by adding imperceptible subliminal messaging to audio signals. And there is a whole list right here full of these, and God knows what other patents exist out there. I found this one by accident. Fuck, there's 2 separate files that both are described to
remotely cause individual to hear voices via EMF waves, imperceptible to anyone else.
A literal schizophrenia gun. I mean, with all of this, it's not so hard to believe the victims. There is documented proof that the government has had no issue with the idea of toying with controlling thoughts and behaviors of other human beings. There is a book that you can buy, or you can just find a PDF of it online, called The Reality of Psychotronic Weapons Today, written by Preston Bailey, PhD. The book covers many different patents and weapons that the US government has funded, including a distributed sound and light array debilitator, also known as the puke ray. It generates lights and sounds in a specific manner to overload the brain. Prolonged exposure can result in even more unpleasant effects, including nausea and vomiting. Bailey even states that there's a machine called the Medusa, a weapon that creates audio to disorient targets, but it goes completely unnoticed by the human ear. It apparently uses pulses of microwave radiation to generate shockwaves inside of a person's skull. Okay, yes, so there's weapons made probably for wars, but that doesn't automatically mean that they're used against citizens, right? I mean, sure, the NSA record our every movement, and sure, the FBI created the counterintelligence program, and sure, the CIA created the Tempest operation, which is used to spy on your electronic device screen by intercepting the radiation that emits from your device. And sure, the CIA performed MKUltra, where they spent decades attempting to brainwash citizens. And sure, the CIA performed the Stargate project, where they attempted and documented psychic abilities. And sure, the CIA operated Project Chatter, which was designed to obtain information from citizens against their free will. And sure, the CIA made Project Artichoke, where they attempted to create assassins through drug-induced hypnosis and would force addicts to go into withdrawal and attempt to create a new personality during their amnesia-like state. And sure, they tested Project Artichoke on groups that were deemed as untrustworthy during none other than 1950s America. And sure, the CIA may have brainstormed Operation Northwoods, which was the idea of CIA operatives bombing American citizens and blaming it on Cuba so we could justify a war. And sure, the United States government once tested a biohazard weapon spray on an entire city to study its spread. Where was I going with this? Wait, hold on. Is the government difficult to trust? No. It's almost as if there's lots of documented evidence to back up the victim's theories and claims. But does that mean every victim is being hunted by the CIA? Well, no.
Do you believe in mental telepathy?
First, I want to circle back to the little rant I had prior to discussing the evidence. I made a comment about an echo chamber, the idea that the world is after you and you can't trust anyone, to just give up and stay alone. This right here could be, and more than likely is, causing significant damage to a lot of people's health. To brush away any and all thoughts and title everyone as the bad guy. First of all, That's an absolute. But above all else, it's single-minded and it's dangerous. You can find a lot of people discussing that the end goal of gangstalking is to cause a person, to cause a victim, to take their life. But by simply telling everyone who suffers with these ideas, whether they are based on documents or delusions, that there is nowhere to go and no one to help, it only fuels these depressing thoughts and ideations. According to the Environmental Research and Public Health article, The Phenomenology of Group Stalking, a content analysis of subject experiences, over 0.66% of adult women, along with 0.17% of adult men, report being gangstalked in the West. By definition, stalking is often an individual who acts solely by themselves, or in some cases, stalking through proxy, i.e. online, or by telling their peers to also go after you. So, their article decides that 3 or more separate individuals need to be involved in order for a case to be labeled as gangstalking. They hosted an anonymous questionnaire online for adults who defined themselves as victims of stalkers, and they discovered that 12.3% of the participants claimed that they were being gangstalked. The study then took 50 different written accounts to analyze deeper and found that the victims' stories are something we're kind of already used to hearing. Examples stating that it's a brainwashing military experiment, or it's part of an overt agenda to create and test mind control. They're creating weaponry tested on us. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? I began driving a friend around to make his pot sales, and I started noticing we would get tailed from time to time. I knew this friend had connections in weird places. He knows members of Anonymous, and he knows people who work at the Pentagon. I also did a lot of research and was very vocal about being anti-government and anti-corporation. This is what got me targeted. Once you're on their list, your life can become a living hell. Because I refused to join their devil cult and become an operative, I would become a victim. My invitation to join came at an early stage via voice to skull. This article even boils down similar traits between each victim's story. 94% of the stories mention being followed or surveilled. 80% mentions a conspiracy theory, normally involving government agents. 66% share direct physical interference and harassment. 44% mention being targeted via noise, and 40% of victims mention mind control. In the end, the article seems to acknowledge that there is a gangstalking experience happening, although it's seemingly impossible to determine why there's one happening. The possibilities aren't necessarily endless, but with the little to no evidence besides word of mouth, it's difficult, if not impossible, to proceed further with a conclusion. Something you'll notice quickly after reading online is the concept of schizophrenia, an unfortunate disability that millions around the globe deal with. But targeted individuals don't see schizophrenia as just a disability. They see it as a slur. If you bring up the possibility of a targeted individual having schizophrenic symptoms, they barrage you with insults. When I posted on Patreon that I was working on a gangstalking video, a supporter reached out and recommended a channel to me, and after only one single video, the idea of schizophrenia is already mentioned, obviously negatively, and the uploader responds to that comment stating that every single person who thinks that they have schizophrenia is actually a targeted individual. Yet, when we look into the medical field for this very concept, the results are staggeringly different. I mean, wow, who would have guessed? At one point in all of our lives, we've believed in a story even before discovering if it were true or false. This is simply a human experience that most of us have. We hear of something that fits a personal agenda of ours, and if it fits what we're subconsciously seeking, then we don't always seek verification. So it's up to each and every one of us to keep ourselves accountable for when information is proven to be false. Except, have you ever heard of delusional disorder? It is when a person's brain actively struggles with facts, logic, and reasoning. And of course, it's much more complex than that. Humans with delusional disorder struggle to balance their beliefs between real and fictional. And what makes it worse is that if you discuss this with them, Their disorder leads them to believe that you are wrong, and secondly, you're actively conspiring and working against them. The disorder isn't always associated with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disabilities. Sometimes, it can be trauma-induced, whether from emotional manipulation, family history, or even substance abuse. But the disorder remains the same. Victims struggle to believe when someone's helping them, and struggle to grasp between reality and imagination. Similarly to schizophrenia, if gone unchecked or against medical orders, the symptoms may increase. Symptoms like hallucinations, psychotic depression, or manic episodes of bipolar disorder are just some ideas, but the delusions can spread into other areas. There is delusional jealousy, where you believe your partner is unfaithful regardless of the lack of evidence. There's grandiose delusions, where you believe yourself to be deserving of a crown, you're all-powerful, and you're immensely rich, despite your social status. And then, there are persecutory delusions. To suffer with persecutory delusions is to believe that you are at the end of a developed evil plot. You're being tracked, followed, you're being spied on and lied to, and all of this will result in harm. These symptoms can lead a victim to have anxiety, depression, and insomnia, and if gone untreated, it can lead to a state of mental impairment. The severe damage is not instantaneous in most, with many people maintaining a high level of functionality for years. But their delusions, these hallucinations and obsessions, often resort the person to their own personal prison. But of course, to the individual, it's more of a personal solitude. No one can be trusted, and no one is allowed inside of their shelter. These individuals could become too frightened to step outside of their shelter, even for work. This act of solitude and seclusion only heightens their depression, with some cases even facing suicidal behaviors. This is why it's dangerous to just go online and trust what others say. I mean, you can apply that to anything, but you could be hearing stories of pure hallucination and getting advice from victims who have all but completely shut out every individual of their life. Advice such as give up and don't even try. Advice that completely rejects the medical field and looks down upon health specialists. There are special forms of treatment if you feel that you have symptoms which last for weeks at a time, and if you're willing to ignore internet forum moderators. I'm not going to sit here and say the cliche, take meds, schizo, as professionals have even heavily stated that medical supplements alone are not effective towards helping with the symptoms. The best recommendation is to seek a professional to talk to. Do I believe gang stalking is real? Honestly, yeah. But that's with the inclusion of cartel members, grassroots drama, and other criminal activities. However, the chance of everyone on the internet who claims they're being stalked by alphabet agencies and shadow governments is next to, if not entirely, laughable. That's just my personal opinion though. I will admit, there is something I did not discuss. There are people who believe they're gang stalked by demons and demonic energy, but I'll be honest, the idea of gang stalking spiritual warfare is far from my niche. I attempted looking into the idea, but a lot of the videos I've watched seem to be more of support groups rather than information pieces. So that's a topic I'll leave for the more spiritually involved. I hope you enjoyed this video, although I'm sure there will be some angry comments. It felt nice returning back to the channel's roots, and I plan on covering more topics like this. So, thank you all. I hope you have a great night, and as always, this has been the Maverick Files.
Passengers returned. One side always in the sunlight, the other always in darkness. The known and the unknown. Frightening to each other only when they are both unknown and misunderstood.